Hi there, I'm Don.
And hi, I'm Cindy. Welcome to Pearls of Liberty, August 25th, 2012. We were camping last weekend and did just an abbreviated version of Pearls of Liberty, which you may have seen on YouTube. But it was nice to get away, and it was refreshing to be outside for the most part of EMFs and Wi-Fi. So it's also nice to be back home and a comfortable bed because we were camping. This week some things happened, like the Empire State Building shooting, and this is shooting thing. They play it up so much, as Alex Jones said. There were 19 murders in Chicago overnight that same night, and the Empire State Building shooting was the focus. And he also mentioned that there is gun control.
You got to take away the guns from the people that didn't do it.
Yeah, exactly. You already can't have a gun in New York City. So what's that about? Anyway, we really didn't want to go there too much because there's a lot of information out there about that, and we wanted to give just a little more of a distant look at some things. Just to mention the power struggle ongoing between the cabal and supposedly the good guys. There was a great message from Poofness last week. Benjamin Fulford and others are claiming that the defeat of the cabal is near. A couple really good ideas to focus on is that there was no successful terror attack at the Olympics. There was no HAARP-induced West Coast or Australia earthquake, as some people were predicting. No tsunami. And also, there hasn't been a revaluation of the Vietnamese dong. And the people who are opposing the release of the new banking system, based on something that Foot Forward, one of the dinar gurus, said this week, the bad guys want the Vietnamese dong to revalue without the Iraqi dinar and some of the other things that are meant to go hand in hand. So the very fact that the Vietnamese dong has not revalued yet is a sign that the bad guys, the cabal, the bankers, whatever you want to call them, are not getting their way.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing that I thought was really the most encouraging and insightful from Foot Forward that helps me to know, yeah, the guy's on the same page and at least some of the things that we are, was the fact that he stated that the reason that countries are invaded has less to do with terrorism than it has to do with the fact that they're trying to sell oil using some other currency than US dollars. And that is absolutely true from my research. And the real reason that Gaddafi was killed was he was trying to set up a gold or real value monetary system for not only Libya but the entire continent of Africa, and he had to be taken out. That had to be stopped. Any oil-rich region, they being the banking cabal, need to funnel that into dollars, and they've been doing that ever since the early days of Henry Kissinger and Nixon and all of that, and before actually, but that was really when the plans were solidified. It was in the 70s after the dollar went off of the gold standard. It got onto a quasi-oil standard, and the wars for oil is really not true in itself. That the fact that wars are actually for the banking cabal to be able to dominate and use oil as a controlled commodity to fund their global operation. That's what's really going on. So anyway, he's on the same page about that. That was interesting for me to see. So Yeah, there are some encouraging signs that the cabal would have liked to have split the Dong from the dinar in order to do a controlled double dipping thing so that they could increase their leverage, because right now this thing's gotten away from them, and the BRICS economic system, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, has gained considerable momentum, and I think it's premature to say that the cabal is defeated, it's dead. I think that this is a walking monster that likes to play possum. So it's not time to be fearful, but it's not time to be jubilant either. It's really just time to be very alert in terms of looking behind the curtain, seeing what's really going on.
Sure, we definitely want to remain vigilant and not drop our guard, and just maintain the pressure of continually putting truth out there in whatever means are available to every one of us and to each of you. This isn't actually in our notes, but we're kind of at that place, and obviously the Republican National Convention is scheduled very soon. And another issue Foot Forward brought up, he had a dream that the convention was not able to take place due to a storm, that it had to be canceled. And I did see a news article that stated that it's possible that the convention could be threatened by what is now Tropical Storm Isaac. And I thought the very idea that this tropical storm is named Isaac is interesting, because Abraham's son was named Isaac, and Isaac means laughter. I guess you could say Psalm 2. You know, God laughs at the plans of the wicked. So we'll see what happens.
And the thought that I had when I was reading that passage, I didn't tie it into Republican convention or anything, but the whole thing of Hagar and the what's the name of the other son? Ishmael. The mocking the child of promise, Isaac, was one of the things that caught my attention, and that was the reason that Hagar was sent away. And you could say that was the root of the division between these two major branches and world religions, etc. And I thought it was real interesting that there was this, it was all based on this ridicule of not, I'd always in my mind, previously, how it is when you read the Bible, if you do, that you tend to sort of get away from the directness of it and form another view. My idea was that Hagar was making fun of the son, but it was actually Ishmael that was making fun of Isaac. And that was the reason that Sarah, Abraham's wife, complained and then got Hagar and her son Ishmael kicked out. So the root was a mocking spirit of the children of the flesh for the children of promise. And boy, do we have that today. We have this spirit that is enthroned in the world power systems, mocking the children of God, saying, ha, you silly people think you're going to get some kind of a blessing. You think you're going to get this major change in the world economics. But those of us that are children of the promise do believe that that's going to happen.
Yes, we do. We wanted to take a look this week at accounting versus creativity, and how accounting and regulations and controlling everything allows for the theft of life force and the frustration of creativity.
In my work situation, working in IT, going through management changes, and those have kind of accelerated in IT these days, and in a hospital environment, they don't like to make changes too quickly because that can really disrupt patient care, and that's a big no-no. But that's not in any way an endorsement in my mind of the the healthcare system, but just a reality that you can't make waves too quickly. Anyway, the changes are kind of speeding up, heating up. Just seems to be that the momentum is there for a shift, and it's not a shift for the better. And I'm just seeing this from not really so much of a personal level, but just as an observation on world systems and quasi-political economic systems, that whenever you get this desire at a high level that you can't even see for vertical integration and control, things deteriorate on the bottom end of that scale. And what's happening in the healthcare system right now is there's big federal money that is being offered to hospitals like the one we're working in, and to put in these scanning systems. And so these scanning systems are going in, and it's actually created a lot of turmoil. And the healthcare provider that is providing our healthcare systems, who I won't name out of kindness and generosity in my heart, has given us something that the doctors are very unhappy with, and it's making them less productive. And they're saying, well, the people that designed this obviously don't use it, and they should have asked us. And so those concerns are being escalated and given feedback. But I frankly don't think that the powers that be are all that concerned. Well, what you have is the system is driven by something other than what the people it's serving think that it's being driven by. The people that are using it, the doctors, the nurses, and everybody else that's having to do all this scanning of all this healthcare information now, they're concerned about their productivity, and they're concerned about their access to the information. And it was all sold to them as being something that would enable them to have faster and easier access, and would have minimal impact, if any, increase their productivity. So lo and behold, the opposite is happening. Well, the system, I'm not going to attribute it just to, well, they didn't give enough thought to the system. I think it's more than that. I think it's the fact that there's efficiency, you can bet your bottom dollar, in terms of how those images can be funneled up to the people that want to see them, but not efficiency in terms of the people down at the grassroots who actually want to have access. So this, in my mind, is an example of a vertical integration that serves the people at the top and doesn't serve the people at the grassroots. So since I'm living through that, I thought I'd pass it on as a general observation of the area of the system that I'm in. And I think that this is something that we all see in whatever arena of life we're at. If we're in the, quote, modern America, this is what we see all around us. We see stuff being gobbled up by people at the top of the food chain, and little crumbs and minimal food being left for the people at the bottom.
Several weeks ago, we listened to an audio of a man whose name is Franco Collin, and we will have the link to the audio included in our comments and our notes. He was talking about Rome and how the New World Order system is really all based on Roman concepts. And one thing that he stated was that Rome didn't really have a whole lot of creative energy, that most of their artwork was copied from other sources, and he named the sources. Their society wasn't, we're always taught to think of Rome in terms of this great society. Greece had, pretty great government, and a lot of the things that Rome is praised for did not originate with Romans. But the one thing that they did very, very well was accounting, keeping track of everything, knowing where people were, implementing systems that controlled the flow of money and people and resources. And does this sound familiar at all? I think drones and Google to monitor us and Facebook to report all of our friends and activities.
Scanning of healthcare documents.
Exactly.
I think creativity is really the enemy of control and tracking. So you have this natural opposition. And people that want to live in a free society need to throw monkey wrenches into these gears in whatever creative ways you can find to do them. And that means getting outside the box. Don't go with the flow. That means saying, hey, I thought it would be better for everybody and more efficient if I did it this way. And you know what? You're probably right, because the way that it's being done is not efficient. So use those opportunities. And that's, in my work, I do think systems, I do like systems, but I like systems at a lower grassroots level that serve the people. So I'm always looking for ways to do that, and ways to decentralize power. So I'm passing on information, and you know what? Sometimes the powers that be don't want that information passed on. So that's the way that you can be a somewhat subtle revolutionary in the midst of a control system. And the Romans really were the original fascists. That's what the fasci are. There's these bundles of wheat that go back actually before Rome, but in terms of modern culture, the fascist system has its roots in Rome, and you have an opportunity to be an individualist, which is very simply an anti-fascist. Go for it.
We just wanted to mention briefly Tony Scott's death and the fact that he jumped off a bridge, left more than one suicide note, but none of them gave any reason for his suicide. ABC News reported shortly after the suicide was announced that he had an inoperable brain tumor, which turned out to be completely false. And there was an article that I read today that stated they've done an autopsy and they're waiting to declare the cause of death until they get some toxicology screens back.
You mean they're waiting for the tumor to grow so that they can see it there?
It's really, I mean, let's face it, okay, there is, of course, Don and I tend to see, shadows lurking behind every tree, but there are a lot of shadows lurking behind a lot of trees, and
just because we're paranoid doesn't mean they don't have to get us.
Exactly. And there does seem to be some very loose ends regarding this suicide, and one of them is that he was working on a miniseries called Coma. It's a remake of a movie starring Michael Douglas and Geneviève Bujold from, I think, the 70s. Terrifying movie. I watched it maybe a year ago. It still is very scary because it's about organ harvesting. It's about a hospital facility that changes the oxygen mix while people are having surgery so that they go into a coma if they have a rare organ type, and then the organs are sold to the highest bidder. So just even the old movie from years ago is very damning to certainly that hospital and by wider implication the healthcare system. And there's a lot more pressure on that system now. So did he go too far?
I think that people need to be warned about this, and real specifically, just as from my point of view, don't ever sign the organ donor thing on your driver's license or whatever, because you're asking for them to kill you. Really. If they see that and you're in the hospital, they go, oh yeah, here's another opportunity to get one quickly and to make some money off of it. And at the risk of offending some people, I'll say that one of the worst offenders in the world in this whole organ harvesting thing is Israel. So I'll just throw that out there and let you do your own research, but that's what I've found. Part of the reason for my being suspicious of Tony Scott is because his brother Ridley has made some films that I really admire from a freedom perspective, and that's Gladiator and the latest Robin Hood, which we both think is just outstanding. because it's not what people look for in Robin Hood, but it's really good from a freedom perspective. So the fact that those guys, both being directors and brothers, they could have killed Tony to get to Ridley, blah, blah, blah. The possibilities are out there.
So, rest in peace, Tony Scott. Thank you for some great movies. Really one of our probably top 20, Man on Fire.
Excellent. Yeah, Man on Fire is great. He's most famous for Top Gun. We should mention that.
We haven't been talking a lot about films lately, but we saw one this week that we really wanted to highlight. And that is Margin Call with Kevin Spacey and Demi Moore, to name a couple.
Because we know or we have a good idea what was behind the mortgage banking collapse and bubble that burst, we see more in this movie than some people might. There are some really strong implications that the people at the top of this company were being, playing the circumstances, and realized that it was more than just a numbers game, but went along with that because when it was obvious that the bubble was bursting, they said, okay, now is the time. Anyway, this is a film about the mortgage collapse from inside of a mortgage company that's not named, but it's the first one to realize that this bubble is popping, and they basically pop it, and they're the first ones out the door and start selling, and everything happens from that. It all takes place within a 24-hour period. Yeah, pretty close to a 24-hour period. Maybe I think it maybe trails on into the next day, so it's slightly more. But it's one of those compressed timeline kind of films. But the character development in it is great. Kevin Spacey is great as usual. Wonderful actor, and he's not a bad guy in this. He plays the lead salesman. I'm thinking kind of Glenn Roth kind of a thing, but updated with modern technology, and just the whole idea that the salesman doesn't want to do this selling because he realizes he's destroying the market and people will never want to do business with him again, and it ruins all of his relationships, etc. And so there's a literal rocket scientist is the person that cracks the mathematical puzzle and realizes that they've been operating for the last week or so, bouncing into the other side of the risk profile, and etc. So it's a wonderful movie. The drama is great, and it'll help anyone who watches it make connections between what's happening in our world and the forces behind it, at least to some extent.
Sure, it's excellent, and we can't give anything away because you already know that the mortgage bubble broke and the banks needed to be bailed out in 2008.
And that the people that broke the bubble got the bonuses. Go in peace and think for yourself.